This paper was presented at the JCT Traffic Signal Symposium 2024, thanks to our media partner Highways News, and sponsored by AGD Systems, Four-Way Consulting, Traffic Group Signals, Smart Micro UK, TRL Software, PTV Group, Census Networks, and Starling Technologies.
Before I introduce myself and Andy, who actually uses a DMRB and MCHW here? Can I have a show of hands? And who has used them? So most people. Okay, so do you want to introduce yourself, Andy?
Yes. Hi, I'm Andy Truscott from Atkins. I've been leading the team, supporting Jonathan with this update work that we're going to be explaining to you.
So I work in safety engineering standards and national highways, and we've done a refresh of the DMRB at the beginning of our RIS 1 period, so that's been out a few years. In RIS 2, we had to refresh the MCHW, and as part of the refreshing of the MCHW, we've had to go back to do the DMRB. Sorry, my driving. So, I can't even read this. As part of our RIS obligations, we've had certain things that we've had to do. And as everybody can read up there, is to sort of encourage the work of updating the standards. When I first started the National Highways, one of the first jobs I had to do was update the street lighting. That took nearly 6 years to update it, and it never got published in the form we intended when I first started the National Highways in 2014. So all of the documents were quite old. So the idea of the new cycle now is we can update them within months. And it's to support the new structure of how we're going to do things, which probably you'll explain that in a minute a bit more than I do. So the MCHW will provide a clear and unambiguous requirements and instructions compatible with modern contract forms and future construction practices. So what we're trying to do is improve guidance for our supply chain so we get better value for money.
Okay, so we're just going to touch on what the key changes are to the MCHW, both in terms of the MCHW as a whole, but also then more specifically in terms of traffic signals. So this slide sort of picks up a few things, which I will cover some of them. So yeah, the changes affect the structure of the MCHW. They also affect the individual documents that make up the MCHW, so that in terms of the layout, the format, the style of the clauses, and the content itself. So obviously it makes sense while we're making these changes to update the content as well to reflect latest best practice. We're also looking to improve opportunities for innovation by making requirements or removing prescription where it's not needed, making them more outcome-based. The content itself is being drafted using a software package, and the benefits of that mean, as Jonathan was saying, it will make it easier to make changes in the future to the standards. It also will support each scheme in developing the scheme-specific appendices at the moment.
Can I interrupt this slide?
Yep.
So we use a package and we record all the changes, so we can actually historically see what the changes were and why they were made. So when we've looked back on some of the documents that we got, we don't know why we're in the position that we're in, because we don't know the people that wrote the documents 15 years ago, why they thought about what they did, why they did what they did. So part of using sort of collaborative software for people writing them, because our standards aren't only for us, they're for the devolved powers, and they've got different requirements for their standards as well. Sorry, Andy.
Okay, so we're just going to have a look at the change to the structure then. So if you've If you are familiar with the MCHW, volumes 1 to 3 will be the ones that you'll be using most of the time. So that's the specification for highways works, the notes for guidance, and the highway construction details. So that's essentially the drawings. And then associated with those are the scheme-specific appendices. So the new structure is slightly more streamlined. We've still got the specification for highways works. Then we've got the instructions for specifier documents, which essentially sort of linked to volume 2. So that gives the instructions to the person who's preparing the contract for a scheme, what information that they need to provide. And then the scheme-specific information is now called the works-specific requirements. And the work that we've been doing is essentially taking the content from volumes 1 to 3 and putting it into the new format. So part of that has been taking the construction requirements and moving that into the new SHW. But then what we found is there's some existing design information that's currently in the MCHW. So we've been extracting that and putting that into the DMRB. So there's a clearer distinction between the construction requirements in the MCHW and what's in the design manual. As I said, instructions for specifier, that follows on from volume 2, and that feeds into the work-specific requirements. I suppose the two key things that you might spot from this that will probably impact you or you'll spot when you'll start using it is, so firstly, volume 3 is going to be no more. So the drawings that are currently in volume 3, if they're still applicable, they'll be moved either into the MCHW specification for highways works or into the DMRB. They won't be remaining as individual drawings. And then in terms of the work-specific requirements, so the scheme-specific information, currently, if you're preparing a scheme-specific specification, you may well have your own template. You may do it in a particular way for your scheme, and someone else may do it quite differently on their scheme. Going forwards, that's all going to be driven now from the MCHW to provide a more standardised approach to the layout and the structure of those documents. So they'll still contain design information that's specific to your scheme, but in terms of what they look like, there'll be a more consistent approach across all schemes. Very briefly then, just in terms of document codes, so you'll probably be familiar with the different series that the MCHW currently comprises for different disciplines. This is going to change, so traffic signalling systems at the moment is part of series 1200. In future, there'll be a 5-character code. If you've used the DMRB, you'll sort of recognise this. So the code comprises the first letter relating to the discipline area. So for traffic signalling systems, that's technology T. The second letter relates to the life cycle stage that document relates to. So D for design, C for construction, and then there's a unique code for each document as well. So just relating that back to the structure diagram then for traffic signals. So currently the main clauses relating to traffic signalling systems is clause 12, 17 and 18, and there are a few G-series drawings as well. So that is now going to be presented in terms of the TC 101, TP 101 and TD 101 set of documents. Okay, just to then give you a brief sort of intro in terms of what the MCHW is likely to look like, or will look like. This is just an example of some of the content from one of the new sections relating to traffic signal controllers. So each section within the document now will relate to a product or activities relating to that product. And then there's a clearer distinction between the different types of requirement within each section. So you can see there's product requirements, so which British standard or TAPAS spec they need to conform with, or even if there are specific scheme requirements for that product. Then we've got the installation requirements, so what does the contractor need to know in terms of how to install that product in the scheme. We've then got verification requirements, so that's to verify that the product meets the product requirements, that the product's been installed in accordance with the installation requirements. And then finally, documentation requirements. So in this case, for traffic signal controllers, documentation to confirm that it meets the TOPAZ spec. Then you can probably just make out, highlighted in the grey box, there's some slightly different clauses there, prefixed with an SI. That stands for specifier instruction. So it's these clauses that comprise the instruction for specifiers documents. So these are the instructions to the person putting the contract together, what information from the design they need to include. So in this example, it's providing details of the general specification forms that apply for each site.
Right, so what we've done, I think more broadly than a lot of other national highway standard, is our consultation with the wider body, because we've had a lot of people from our supply chain involved in writing the standards. So we've had WSP, 4-way, obviously Atkins, and then people from local authorities as well, albeit they're not using their document for themselves, but it's their knowledge and consistency. And one example was slot cutters, because we've had lots of issues with failing of slot cutters and how they actually do that. So we had some slot cutters come along to one of our consultation sessions and answer some queries about, well, how do you do things? Because there was a requirement under one of the pavement documents that these loops were cut before the wearing course was put down. But as we know, a lot of loop cutters aren't mathematicians, and to actually get that alignment exact is virtually impossible, because the loop cutters generally go off the white lines, and obviously they steer themselves around all the street furniture and whatever else. And hopefully we've got that sorted out within things. Most of this hopefully will make things easier, and as I say, if we do get something wrong or things change, we've got a really speedy way of doing things, and it should take weeks and months, not years and centuries, to actually do things. So one of the notable things that we put in the new things is ++ and X-line. Now, we're not allowed to use product names, so we've called it Control Area Network Distribution and Cabling Systems. There's probably a better name, and we might need to change that going forward. But obviously, we're not allowed to use a product name like ++, but we've mentioned that in there. And another one of my requirements that I put in there is about the usage of UPSs. Now, this is only a sort of loose requirement, but the designer needs to liaise with the overseeing organisation. That's National Highways, Transport for Wales, Transport for Scotland, Transport for Northern Ireland. Various bodies have different requirements for different things, but my big thing was that we've got junctions, if they go out on our network, that become really dangerous. So that is a new requirement. Again, I'm sure I'm going to get questions about that. So that is it. And my last slide is to improve this document. It's a live document. We're going to share it. If you've got any comments or thoughts or things that need to be included, please, our contact details will be at the end. I'll do it like that. And please let me know. We might not get it right, and it's feedback. So take it from there. Anything for you, Andy, before? No. So any questions? Go on, Keely. So there's a big bang of all of the standards on the 1st of April or 31st of March. So all of the MCHW is changing in national highways, but obviously depends what your speciality is. But there might be over knocking effects of other standards like pavements on people. Well, you know that anyway, but I missed it out. Yeah, that's probably the key question. Yeah, you're right.
Who's got the microphone?
Oh, sorry, Mark, down at the front.
I'll do this without the mic. Thank you very much. In your diagram showing the mapping of the MCHW...
Hold it closer.
Sorry, is that better? Yep. In your diagram showing the mapping of the MCHW elements onto the new structure, all those appendices which we know and love, which we've worked with and have become familiar with, didn't have any arrows directing where their content might go. Could you just say a few words about where the appendix content might end up, please? I guess that's Andrew from the way that Jonathan's pointing at you.
Sorry, which content?
In the MCHW diagram that you had, the slide up there, you had the appendices under the volumes.
Yes.
And there was, I didn't see, maybe I missed it, but I didn't see any arrows mapping their content into the new structure. So I just wonder how you've accommodated that.
So the appendices are being, is that what you said in terms of what's happening to the appendices?
Yeah.
So the appendices are being replaced by the work-specific requirements.
Okay.
So the content, i.e. the design content that currently goes into those work-specific requirements, into the contract-specific appendices, will go into the work-specific requirements.
Okay. It was the absence of an arrow that threw me.
Yeah, so I suppose it's because essentially that content is coming out of the instruction specifiers, so TP 101, the one above. But you're right, yeah, essentially that translates across.
Thank you.
Some of those drawings are really old and are no longer relevant, so yeah, and it might be that we need new drawings, and how that works, I don't know. But hence why I've stated that this is a live document and we can make changes as we go forward.
They're asking for your help. Are you all clear how to give it?
Sorry.
Are you clear on the timetable? Are you clear on the timetable?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, hopefully. I've got so many things going around my brain at the moment with this, because we're actually at the moment going through commercial judgments on things. So we've got a whole team looking at they're called Technical Assurance Group, isn't it? TAG.
Technical Standards Group.
TSG, Technical Standards Group. So they look at the commercial aspects of everything and all of the other aspects of that. And we're in the final quality checks at the moment. So we have completed our work, but it's just now just getting the finesse. And obviously there will be a big bang next March. And there will be training for the supply chain. And this is really the first message that will be delivered. And there will all be other colleagues from the those teams going to the supply chains. But obviously this is a document mainly aimed at national highways, but I know a lot of people use it, so hence why it's here. And obviously you can go onto our website there, standards for highways, and everything will be on that website.
So do take the opportunity to put your thoughts in, because if you come back next year and say you don't like it, the answer is going to be, well, it's your own fault. Thank you both.